Look, don't die twice. Okay, look. Wanted to talk about this F the streets conversation that's been going on lately. They got two things that I want to talk about in relation to this topic of this F the streets topic. One, I want to say this, right? Whether it's 21 Savage, whether it's Boosie, whether it's another rapper, whether it's me, whether it's you, if anybody makes certain kind of music, gangster rap in particular is what I'm talking about, celebrating, glorifying, promoting certain activity, if you make it, if you co-sign the people that make it, you play it, you blast it, to have a good whatever, you are doing your part to help further street culture in the society that we live in. I just won't make that clear, Hey, look, whether it's 21 Savage, whether it's Boosie, whether it's me or you, none of us want things that are really street activity to happen to none of us people that we care about. And generally speaking, none of us really don't think it's good. That's why even rappers who celebrate, promote, glorify street activity, the second they got a chance to get up out of that environment or get out of the streets, if they was ever in the streets, they get out. If they thought it was such a good thing, they would stay, right? So, like I said, whoever the rapper is, 21 Savage, Boosie, me, you, or whatever, none of us don't really think these things are good, right? I think all of us are really in agreement with that. We really don't want that for ourselves and people that we care about. So the question is, how does the button of heads even come about when somebody say F the streets? Because this brings me to my second point, the main thing I want to talk about. I think people don't believe there's a difference between being from the hood and being street, in my opinion, right? Even the fact that I would say, for example, right, the hood, we talking about the neighborhood, right? But there's a distinction when you say hood and neighborhood, right? Both of them, they're the same thing, but when you say hood, there's a street element to it than just saying neighborhood, right? Both of them have houses, both of them have people staying in the houses. Some people have kids come out to play, you meet your neighbor, how you doing? Hey, you want to watch the game? All that's a neighborhood. That happened in a neighborhood or the hood, right? When you say the hood, that's the street element that's related to it, right? But look, if you lived in the hood, went to school in the hood, got familiarity with the hood, they got a bunch of people who in the hood, but they not in the streets, right? There's a big difference between being from the hood and being from the streets, right? Now look, here's the thing right here. In the hood, not just a neighborhood, because every neighborhood might not be the hood. In the hood, street culture, things of the street, stuff like that is very prevalent, right? If you living in the hood, whether you street or not, if you living in the hood and you are in the midst of all this stuff that's going on, whether you take your part in it or not, that stuff, the street culture, the drug dealing, the robbing, the killing, the stealing, the pimping, the trap, that stuff is so strong and heavily steeped in that culture. It's to the point where the street don't just stay where it's at, right? It overtakes the environment. It overtakes the social climate of the environment to the point where them lines getting blurred. Street stuff ain't just street stuff no more. It became like the culture of that hood environment. And if you're not, like I talk about this in other videos, like Wake Up Call to the Hood, right? I talk about this in other videos. This stuff I talk about, from time to time. But if you're not really intentional when you living in the hood, before you know it, street culture can overtake you and you're not even in the streets. How can street culture overtake somebody who not even in the streets, right? This is how street culture can overtake somebody who not even in the streets, right? Some of those things that's going on in the streets, and like I said, I talk about this in that video called Wake Up Call to the Hood. I'll leave the link in the description, right? Some of those things that's going on in the streets don't get frowned upon in those environments, right? They look at it as a means to, hey, this how I'm getting my come up. This how I provide for my family. It give people some type of self-esteem about themselves, right? And if you in that environment, in the hood, where the street culture is going on, And the street culture been so elevated to the point where it's something that's looked at as normal. Man, well, you know, it ain't that bad. And to some point, it become cool, acceptable to the point where you in the streets or you're not in the streets, you celebrate somebody who in the streets. You co-sign what somebody doing. Sometimes in them environments, you can be considered a lame if you either not in the streets or you don't at least co-sign what's going on in the streets. It then took over the social climate, the culture of that environment, and before you know it, people who not even in the streets, co-signing the streets, getting their identity from the streets, even if they're not in the streets, and bang, now the lines got blurred between somebody who's just from the hood versus somebody who's just from the streets. It's to the point where, look, certain stuff that's not even street or get lumped up as being street. Like hustling, for example. Hustling is not a street thing. Can people in the street hustle? Yes, but people hustle everywhere. You can have a person in the hood who make clothing. They make their clothes, they go to the corner and stand in front of the, hey, you know, I got this, I got that. That person hustling. But that person out in the street. But when they doing it in the hood, well, hustling is heavily associated with street culture. You can be a regular civilian not doing nothing illegal, just trying to make an honest living selling your jeans, and it's wrapped up, it's again got lumped up as, you know, yeah, you know, this street stuff, it got a street vibe to it. It ain't street. I remember when I was a kid, I'm talking about 6, 7, 8 years old, 9 years old. Me, my brother, my cousins, my friends, we used to literally say, let's go hustle. What we was talking about was going stand in front of the store, ask people could we help them with their bags for some money, stand in front of the gas pump, see if we can get a quarter to pump somebody. We used to literally call that hustling way back in the day when we was kids. We wasn't in the streets. Was we in the hood while that was going on? Yeah, we was in the hood, but we wasn't in the streets. The hood is a neighborhood with civilians in it. Once they decide to go out there in the hood and do them illegal activities that I'm talking about, they are now doing street activity. If when I was a kid, like I said, we used to go hustle instead of going to the grocery store, the drug dealers who used to be in the neighborhood would have told me, hey, post up on the corner, let me know if the police coming. At the end of the day, I'm gonna give you $50. Even if I was green and naive and didn't know, he didn't got me involved in street activity now. That's what, hey, make the distinction. Being from the hood and hustling, being from the hood and street ain't the same thing. If something goes on in the street, but it goes on everywhere else, like for example, some people, it sounds like some people think that if you're not street smart, you can't have life smarts. That's not, life smarts and street smarts not the same thing. You can have all the street smarts you want, you can go into a corporate environment and be lost. See, people skills and life skills ain't street smarts. Street smarts is for the streets. If you have life skills and people skills, that can translate anywhere. You can go in the streets and apply that. You can go in the corporate world and apply that. You can just go about your everyday life, having to deal with people at your job and apply some life smarts. But I think people from the hood, and particularly people who was in the street in the hood, they necessarily equate, oh man, you got street smarts? Yeah, you know, you can peep game. No, you can't peep game everywhere. They got things you don't know in certain social environments. Now, in the street environment, you may be able to peep it. And if you think that what you probably talking about is life smarts or people skills, which ain't synonymous with the streets. Anybody can have that. But if you develop those people skills in the hood, people gonna automatically, hey, that was street. You got street smarts. Now, the music that get made celebrating the streets, glorifying, promoting it and all that, making it cool, making it acceptable. See, it got to a point where you don't even have to be in the streets to co-sign it. The residue of the streets, as I like to call it, can rub off on you through just being in that hood environment and that stuff being accepted as cool and normal, and the music reinforcing it and emphasizing it, the coolness, the promotion of it, and the celebrating of it. And the thing about that type of stuff, whether it's the music that's reinforcing it or whether it's just street culture in general imposing itself in its ways on the hood, it can get to a point where whether you really in the streets, which is not a good thing, or whether you just from the hood, it can make people want some level of street acceptance in some way, shape, or form. Even if they don't really want to be out there really thugging, really getting in shootouts, really taking these penitentiary chances, it can still want them to have some level of street acceptance, because the street acceptance has been so normalized and been so promoted and celebrated. And you might get ostracized in certain circles if you don't accept street culture on some level. So it makes people want to have that, right? And if anything is associated with something that goes on in the street, people are going to want to associate it with them having some level of street acceptance, some embracing some level of street residue, just because they got a legal hustle they got going on. They want it to be attached to some type of street acceptance. Like I said, when I just say hustling is just hustling. That's why with this conversation, you got some people, although nobody wants what the streets really got, what you got to go through in the streets. Nobody really want that for themselves. Like I say, that's why people get out as soon as they can. Even if they say, some people may still live in the hood, but when they don't have to be, when they feel like they don't have to be in the streets anymore, they get out of the streets. Nobody really want that, right? There shouldn't be a real bump in the heads if them lines ain't really been blurred like that. Some civilians who feel like they being dissed because somebody say, forget the streets. You shouldn't even have people in the streets who feel disrespected if somebody say, forget the streets, because you're supposed to be already on that anyway. You're supposed to be like, yeah, it is. Yeah, shoot, I was in them, but look, forget the streets. That's their way. Yeah, you're right. Everybody should, because everybody really don't want that anyway. People need to stop taking on the vibe, the residue, the culture of the streets, and separate that and let the streets be what it is. Wicked, evil, sick, and twisted. Don't care, love nobody. Let that be what it is. Push it out. Get away from it. Ostracize that. Speak against that. Separate that. And if you are from the hood, I'm not saying that you have to be ashamed that you are from the hood, but don't think that you automatically street or have to uphold street culture, which is sick, evil, wicked, and twisted, in order to not turn your back on that's the way you turning your back on the people in your neighborhood or the neighborhood where you're from, because you don't uphold this twisted culture. Big difference. Really start purposely separating the two. And if somebody thinks something else or think differently about, feel some type of way about you not wanting to uphold the things of the streets, then, you just got to say, hey, bro, hey, man, I'm not with that. The streets don't love nobody. Look at all the damage the streets done to the hood. But people want to marry the streets in the hood. Separate them, divorce them. Let them get divorced. Look, don't die twice.